Alright, so Chapter 5, Part 2 from the Technology in Action textbook. The next thing we want to talk about is how to use Windows 10, or at least the generic parts of using Windows 10. Now, what you see on my screen right now, or on your screen right now, is the Windows desktop. Alright, this will be the primary working area of the computer. Right now we're on the desktop itself, or the home screen, kind of whatever you want to call it. Alright, but I don't have any apps open at all. Alright, the only thing that we can see that is open on my computer, based on the little gray square down here, is Camtasia, and because, well, I'm recording with it, so it kind of has to be open. Everything else is closed down for the purposes of my demo today. Alright, at the very bottom we have the taskbar. On the far left we've got the Start icon menu, we have our search area, we have the task view option, then we have all of my pinned programs, or programs I use rather frequently. Then we have our notification area with hidden icons, we have our clock, we have our other notifications. I guess this isn't notification, this is just our little our taskbar icons, and you can see all the different services or processes that are running in the background right now. Then we have our notifications area, and then actually all the way to the right will minimize everything that is open. So that can be a very useful little button there. It's almost hidden, like if you don't know what's there, you're probably unlikely to click on it. And you might have clicked on it by accident and then confused why everything just minimized. So let's go ahead back to the Start menu. This is the area that allows you access to all of your installed applications. And this is broken down into, say, kind of three sections. We have the far left section, which we can expand, which has your user, so I'm currently logged on as Greg Betts, access to my documents, pictures. We have settings, which brings up the settings screen if you click on it. And then we have, let's go ahead and bring that back up, and we have power-related items, so sleep, shutdown, and restart. You will notice that log out is missing off of the power menu because that doesn't really have anything to do with power. That is now under the user. So if I click on Greg Betts, I can change account settings, I can lock the screen, or I can sign out completely. So signing out and locking, one actually logs you out of the computer, so when you log back in, you'd have to restart whatever you had open, things like that. Where locking just basically makes it so you have to enter your password before someone can use the computer again. If you're the only user of a computer, I would lock it, not sign out, but to each their own. If we go ahead and minimize that again, we have access to our applications, and you can scroll down here and see that I have a lot of stuff installed on this computer, some of which I should probably uninstall. These are in alphabetical order after the recently added section at the very top there, so you can see all the software I've installed since having to do wonderful teaching from home. And then you have alphabetical order from there, which is kind of nice. And the last area is kind of the pinning area. So here we can see all of the different programs that I may or may not use on a somewhat regular basis, and I have them pinned here for my ease of access, so I don't have to go find them in this access list. If I use something super frequently, I pin them down to the taskbar, so you can see File Explorer's down there, Chrome, Putty's this one, Notepad++, Outlook is down there now, Camtasia's open, it's not pinned, so that's a slight difference there. These are the ones that I use somewhat frequently. Now, not only do I have some of these here, but they're also located on the desktops for quick access as well, so one of those two. As you notice in this pinned area, we can actually group things. So I have one group for Office, I have one group for CAD stuff, one group for coding. This is all the stuff for HCC class stuff now that we're teaching from home. I have WinScribe and uTorrent at the top there, and then I have just some other generic stuff that I might use rather frequently. So Spotify, Chrome, Photos, and Edge web browser. I should probably add Firefox to this list just to get my trifecta of web browsers going there. As you can see, most of these are static tiles, so they're just showing the little symbol from that application. Most of them do have the name written on them. My Arduino one does not, which I find kind of interesting. But as you can see, like the Photos one is actually an active icon. So Photos is constantly changing. Right now you can see my lovely daughter who, I don't know, probably 16 months roughly in that picture, somewhere about there. And she's holding a little sign. but you'll see that picture has been changing. You can have some static things. You can drag these around. You can move them over in half block increments. You can resize them. So right now I'm at a medium. You can go down to a small size. I like the medium because it gives you the text underneath it for the most part. Some of them I think you can go, so we're on medium, we can go wide or large. So there are other options there. We can turn the live tile on or off, those types of things. So lots of good options going on there. So the process of putting these things here is called pinning. So if I were to right click on something, so let's go ahead and find Firefox. I can right click on it and I have pin to start, and it actually put it right where basically I'd want it. So I'm going to move it to the top just so it's equal. Alright, so we can pin to the start menu. You can also pin to the taskbar. Let's find out. So you have more, and then you have pin to the taskbar option there, and that will, there you go, make it show up down there even though it is not open. The way you can tell when a program is open in Windows is that little line at the bottom of it. Alright, so Camtasia is not selected right now, so that's why it's not gray. If I click on Camtasia, which is off the screen, that shows me that this is the window that is my active window right now. But that little white line underneath it tells us that it's open, and normally when you are running, you have other options underneath if you right click on something. So right click on this, I can open my recent, I can unpin. Camtasia, I can actually pause or stop the recording from right clicking on that, which is kind of convenient. Let's go ahead and unpin Excel. Windows has a very convenient snapping system. Alright, now traditionally, most of you probably, especially if you're on smaller computers, you just go full screen with everything. All right, which is all well and good. It gets the job done, and probably depending on your resolution of your screen, that's all you really want to do. All right. However, Windows can pin or snap your window to different areas. So if I drag this to the right middle of the screen, you kind of see how that light, that outlined slightly whitened area shows up. Yeah, you can see it a few times. That same way I let go, it's going to go to half the size of my screen. And now it kind of zoomed out on File Explorer. Notice all my icons on my desktop are missing. That's because it's saying, hey, what do you want to put on the left half? It's smart enough to go, well, you put something to the right half, you probably want to put something else to the left. So in this case, I only have File Explorer open. So if I click on that, it will bring that open on the left side. So it very nicely splits my screen. Now, I do have let's quick measure this, a 27-inch monitor at home. So doing two screens side by side like this is very comfortable for me, especially if you do something like a Word document. I actually think it works better than going full screen because you can almost see like a whole paper at once. It's really quite convenient. You can traditionally, let's see if it's gonna, nope. But notice if I have Word extra wide, when I snap to the left, it only fills that spot. So that's very nice. Now your other option is quarters. So I could pin this to the top. I can go to the top too. That's interesting. There you go, and then put that on the bottom. I think that's probably because that was snapped. So if I don't have anything snapped, I can go bottom corner, I can go top corner, and then you can go left, or you could do top left, and then you could have another bottom left. I think this is starting to get a little overkill on my size monitor. Now, if you're one of those people with those 40-inch extra wide monitors or 50-inch ultra wide monitors, I could see this being really useful. Or if you have a really tall monitor. But for my 27-inch screen, overall, I am a fan of the half screens like that. Next, for pseudo productivity, and I've never used this. I've found when I do try to use this that I get lost in things. And Windows has the capability for what's called virtual desktops, and this allows you to organize groups of windows into different displays. So right now, you guys are seeing my main display. I actually have an auxiliary display off on my left. Let's see if I can. Whoop. There, you can kind of see that. All right. So I do have two displays at home, and that allows you to have Chrome open and PowerPoint or Word and Internet or whatever options it is, and you can snap both things full screen, and it works wonderfully. But Windows has a virtual desktop option. So Basically, this is one desktop. You can create a pseudo second one. So let's open up, say, Factory IO here. Oop, come back to the main screen. All right. So you're like, okay, I'll have a play screen and a work screen, we'll call it. So let's say I am going to do what I'm calling playing. So I will open up my Chrome and my Notepad++, and we'll go ahead and throw out Putty up there for good measure. All right. Then I need to have a work tab or a work screen. So if I hold Windows and hit Tab, this takes you to Task View. You can also get here by selecting the button just to the left of the search bar. Have your mouse over it, it says Task View. All right, and this is showing me what's happened now, what happened earlier today, yesterday, the day before, the day before. All right, you can see more days and timelines if you turn that option on. I don't, again, really see the need to see more than like 2 days of history here. All right, but you do have that option. But at the very top left here, it says New Desktop. So we can go ahead and click that button. Notice at the top of the screen, we now have Desktop 1 and we have Desktop 2. If I hover over Desktop 1, it's showing me all the apps that are open on it. If I go to Desktop 2, you'll see what is open there. Now, what I can do, we just changed. All right, Alt-Tab. I can move this to Desktop 2. So I now have what I'm calling my play screen. So let's go ahead and connect, just start that up. All right, and then if I said hit Windows Tab, I can go to my auxiliary desktop and I could have my stuff for my PLC class open here. So you can organize stuff into things that are convenient for you. I don't know if I'd want to leave these things running all the time. I don't know what type of resource hog having virtual desktops is. So if you only have 4 gigs of RAM, if you're like, okay, I'm always just going to leave my programming stuff open here, and I'm always going to leave my play stuff open here, I don't know what type of performance hit that's going to give you. Now, this is a feature that has been around for a while in the Linux world. Linux was the first groups to do this. I can remember playing with it in Linux and being like, wow, this is awesome. I thought it was going to be this great feature that I was going to use all the time. And so I found that I just got too distracted in it. Like, I'm like, oh, let me go ahead and go back to connected components workbench, and I'd click and open it up. I'm like, this isn't the right desktop for it. So then I have to close it down or move it or things like that. So I don't find this to be the most useful thing in the world. Linux did do it first. Mac did it back in 2007, so about 13 years ago at this point. Windows, I think Windows 10 was the first Windows to actually have this capability. You can close desktops completely, which I believe just moves everything to your main desktop. So now you can see I have Connected Components Workbench open and Factory I open as well. All right. One little fun feature that you can do if you're like, okay, I have you have all this stuff open, and you're like, I'm tired of having it all open, and you're just like, this, I only care about Chrome. If you grab Chrome and shake it, everything should minimize. I don't know why Putty didn't. Probably because it doesn't have an option to minimize. But if I bring everything else back up, let's even open up something else. Go ahead and give Firefox up there too. When we're installing updates, of course. But anyway, you're like, I've got too many things open. You can just grab one window and give it a little shake. Come on. There we go. And everything else will minimize. It's kind of like pressing that button in the bottom right-hand corner. If I bring everything back up, loop, everything just goes away. And if you press it again, it all comes back. So kind of jumps you from the desktop to everything that was open. I'm not sure if you do that, and then I click like here. Yeah, it doesn't bring everything else open. So that's kind of a nice little system there. Windows plus S will bring up your search. All right. And depending on what you have configured, you might see some weather information or stuff like that. So just another nice little tidbit there. Now, there are some other user interfaces other than Windows. So we do have Mac, and we have, well, Mac is what we're on right now. Mac and Windows, they are kind of close overall. I don't have a good Mac to record some, screen capture of for you guys, so you'll have to just work with the little picture and whatnot. Mac's taskbar is at the very bottom as well. And you can do things like hide your taskbar or resize it or reposition it. We'll come back to that one in a minute. But Mac's taskbar just is a whole bunch of icons at the bottom of the screen, and again, you have some configurations options over that. They don't really have a start menu, as I would call it. There is an applications icon down there that you click, and it'll give you a list of all the applications you have on your computer, but there's no real start menu that I know of, at least. In the long run, it is very similar in functionality. They also do have a consistent control menu at the very top of the screen that actually changes with each piece of software. So, you know how if I exit out of this, you know how on Windows, you know, you've got the PowerPoint one, and then you've got we have Firefox's one, and I have Notepad's one. The Mac ones always lives across the top of the screen, and it just changes depending on which application you have open, which I do find kind of interesting. All right, Linux, all right, is another option. So here you can see, I think this is like Ubuntu 18 or something along those lines, plus or minus a few years probably. So most interfaces are based on familiar Windows or Mac OSs. All right, so it's pretty close to the same thing, which is very nice because those who are like moving to Linux, if they go with a certain Ubuntu version or Mate version or whatever, it's going to be very familiar to you. So you'll be able to get up and operational very quickly. You'll see again like a kind of a standard taskbar on the left-hand side here. They do have again like an applications button that will press up, which will open a whole bunch of things up for you, which will overall make your life a little bit easier. However, most of them are you can actually change. You can be like, I don't like this environment. I like the Ubuntu core, but I don't like this desktop environment. You can go download a different desktop launcher. All right. So you have KDE, you have Ubuntu's, you have Mates, you have Mints. There's just lots and lots of different versions out there. So just something to think about. Now, I did talk about how you can alter the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. You go ahead and exit out of everything. So first, I always have mine locked so nothing crazy happens to it. But if you want to be weird, most people keep theirs on the bottom. If you want to be weird, you can put it to the top just by clicking and dragging it or throwing it off to a side or the other side. And what I find nice is, depending on if you have multiple monitors, you can actually have the taskbar in different locations on each monitor. So that's kind of convenient that you could have on the bottom of one and the side of the other. I was actually going to, the only thing I don't like about this is, it just doesn't feel right. I don't know. And older versions of Windows, when you used to have like everything spelled out down here, I liked that better. Where now you just have icons. So, but yeah, no, everything is still there in roughly the same location. You can pick where you want it. You can also go into taskbar settings and do some other configurations, like you can have it auto hide when you're in desktop mode. When you put your mouse down by it, it pops up. Same with Tata mode, where you can do small icons so it doesn't take up as much as your screen, which might be useful on laptops that don't have a lot of space. If you just hover over stuff, you can see little previews. So there are all sorts of little configurations that you can do, and these are again saved per person, not necessarily on each computer individually. Now, when it comes to file management, all right, it overall becomes very important to have good file management. There's not much worse than my downloads folder, which I've actually have cleaned out somewhat recently. But you can see there's just files upon files in here, and it gets very confusing when you're looking for something specific. There's 320 items in my downloads. Let's just sort them by name. And let's go group by name now. None. There we go. Group by none. So now you can see we're sorted by name, and it's just, to me, it's very confusing trying to find something in this. So I really like organizing my files. Now, downloaded files organization is not high on my list because for the most part I can select all of this, delete it, and be none the worse for wear because I don't keep anything important in my downloads file. So, something to think about. Now, at the very top here, if I click here, it's not going to show me it, so let's go ahead to this PC, and then C drive, and users, and my name, and then downloads. There we go. So if you click at the top, you have your file path. All right, and you'll notice here that says C:/user/gregbetts/downloads. All right, so C is the root directory or the drive for this file path. Next we have our folder, then we have our primary folder, which would be users, our subfolders, which would be Greg Betts and downloads. Now I don't have a file name given here, so if I were to copy this file name and do a /v and I hit enter right now, it would open that PowerPoint up, which I don't need to do. But now you can see we have, so the C would be our drive, users would be our primary folder, and Greg Betts and downloads would both be subfolders. The file name would be TIA16E_chapter5_PPT. And then our extension here is .pptx. All right. The whole point of having an extension on a file is so your computer knows what program to open it with. All right. Let's go ahead and just give an example here. If I delete my file extension here, it's going to yell at me, but I can say yes. All right. Notice that the little icon associated with it goes away. The type is now just a file. It has no clue what it is. All right. And if I double click on it, and try to open it, it's going to be like, what do you want to do to open this? And it's just going to give me a list of programs installed on my computer. All right. Now if I go to PowerPoint and I do a file open, let me go ahead and browse to my downloads folder and hit all files, and I go to TIA. So if I try to open it here, notice no file extension, no little symbol. If I try to open it, it opens just fine. All right. So that extension is just telling the computer, hey, this is the format of the file it is. This is look for a program that can open this type of file format. So it's there to make your life easier. Is it necessary? No. I could name this .zip, which my computer, oh, I have it open right now, so it's now mad at me. I could name this, come on, .zip. Notice it let me do it. It gave it the little zip file format. And when I try to open it, actually, this is letting me look at things. All right. So it's kind of telling you that this almost is a zip folder. All right. A PowerPoint file is almost a zip file. So now we have our slide layouts. We have my media. So here are all the different pictures that I have actually inside of my PowerPoint. You probably have all of the different slides. These are XML files. But that does tell you probably like text size and where the text is located, what the text says, and how it's formatted, and all this other information. So just because a file has a certain extension doesn't mean it actually is that extension. You could use this as an extreme poor man's way of securing your documents for people who don't know. Don't get me wrong, this is not secure at all in any true aspect, but if I rename a file format and someone's like clicking on it trying to open it and I picked a file format that it isn't, let's go with TXT for example. If I try to open that, I'm going to get gibberish. Hold on, it's thinking. So, anyway, so hierarchical directory format, the hierarchical directory structure for your computer. We have drives, which is the root level. This is your partition of your hard drives. We then have libraries. All right, Windows comes with a few libraries: documents, pictures, videos, things like that. Oh, here we go. Here's that text file of that PowerPoint file. So as you can see, it is just a bunch of gibberish. All right, because it's the wrong file format, and now my computer's not going to behave. Yeah, I'll just close that program. I don't care. And let me delete that file before I try to open it with something else. All right, so here we have my pictures library, and if I right-click down here and I go to Properties, you'll see. Okay, so this is stored on my one hard drive for sharing purposes. It is shared. All right. But yeah, you can set up libraries. Here we go. This is the one I really want. So if I come down to my pictures library, which does take me to the same location, but if I go to properties of this library, you'll notice that local library location, I have one location. I could add multiple folders. So even though I have pictures in 12 different locations on my computer, if I go to my pictures library, it will go to all 12 locations and bring all those files into one spot for me for ease of organizing. So you could have pictures you took versus pictures your wife took, but have them in 2 different folders, so that way you could differentiate who was who, but still have one library that brings all of those pictures together when you're trying to find something. So libraries are very useful. I notice when I click at the top here, it just says libraries. If I go to pictures, it still says library/pictures. It doesn't tell me that this is the D drive I'm looking at. This just says library/pictures. So something to look at. Folders and subfolders are basically the same thing. Just the folder, not a subfolder, is just the main drive on your hard drive. So here would be all of the folders. Any folder inside of one of these would be a subfolder. And files, I like to believe that you guys already know. All right. The C drive is a large filing cabinet in which all your files are stored. Now that is not necessarily true. If we go to my PC, which we're at right now, or this PC in Windows 10, you'll notice that I actually have 4 different hard drives. I have a C, a D, an E, and an H, with a DVD drive being F. So my C drive is where my SSD, or my high-speed storage. You notice I'm actually starting to run pretty low on that. I should have bought a larger SSD. I have a media drive for my pictures and videos and things like that. I have a data drive, just an extra hard drive I had laying around, so I threw in the computer for more storage. And then I have my external, which is my backup from everything that I'm qualifying that is important at this point in time. So you might have multiple drives. Desktops are more likely than laptops that have multiple drives. And on your laptop, you may actually see multiple drives, and one may be really small. It's your recovery partition or something along those lines. So that is something to just keep in mind. Nowadays, multiple hard drives in computers is actually kind of becoming standard. You're going to have one smaller SSD, 120, 250 gig, somewhere in that area, for your main operating system, and then you'll have like a 1 terabyte or a 2 terabyte hard drive that is a spinning disk for data storage or archival of information you don't use very often. So something to think about. When it comes to organizing your files, File Explorer on Windows is the main application for that purpose. You can find files, you can view files, you can manage the contents of folders, those types of things. So, what I have open is File Explorer right now. So we have our path bar at the very top, what you can type in if you know exactly where you're going. You have some quick access related items on the left. The quick access is stuff that you can actually add. So you can see I have a quick access to my class stuff, my CAD folder. This was shared from another computer on the network, which is not accessible right now. So I really should actually remove that because that server doesn't exist anymore. You have my libraries, you have my desktop, my downloads. And then down here we have stuff related to your specific computer. You can see my network related stuff. So kind of a quick access panel on the left, and you can put whatever you want in the quick access. You can either right click on it and say pin to quick access. There we go, 3rd from the top. Or you can just click and drag it over to quick access, and you'll see now it shows up at the bottom there. Alright, let me unpin that since I don't actually need that one there. In the top right hand corner, which you can actually resize this, you have a search bar which searches in the current folder you are in and all subfolders. So if I'm just in my CAD folder, notice it says search CAD, where if I go to this PC and I do C, now it says search the local C disk. So now it's going to search all of those folders and everything in all those folders. So or you could be in this PC and search everything. Your hard drives, your flash drives, your network drives. That could be a lot of stuff. So you do want to be a little bit careful on doing a search on this PC because that could take a while. Now, when it comes to organizing your files, naming convention is going to be very important. All right. Windows does not care if your file names have spaces in them. So if you want to call it, CSC 102 space 02 or CSC space 102 space 02 or 01 or 010 or whatever section you're in, you can do that without any problem. For the most part in Windows. There are some programs that will not accept those spaces. So either you have to leave the spaces out. So if you're trying to say hello world, I would write it as capital HELLO. And capital WORLD instead of doing capital HELLOWORLD, all lowercase, because by capitalizing that first letter of the second word, it helps you visually see where the different words are, so it makes your life a bit easier when you're trying to decipher what you've named your file. Also, underscores are traditionally acceptable for file names, so that might be a very helpful thing to have there. When it comes to extensions, up there we have a list of a whole bunch of some very common extensions. So DOCX, which is Word, XLSX is Excel, ACCDB is a database, PPTX is presentation, PDF is a portable document format, RTF is a rich text format, text is text, HTML, JPEG, zip, and the file extension types just kind of goes on and on and on and on and on. When someone emails you a file and you don't know what it is when you download it, I'd highly suggest that you just copy and paste that file extension into a web browser and search for it and see what it comes up with. Maybe a free program you can download, and maybe something that you don't have access to. As a teacher, I have gotten files submitted to me from Mac computers. I don't have access to a Mac traditionally, and I'm like, you got to submit this in a Word file. I can't open Pages or whatever that Mac file format was. So that was a bit on the annoying side, but it's one of those things that you just have to deal with. Alright, as we continue with organizing your files, copy, moving, and deleting files can be very important. Alright, so if you want to just open a file, just double click on it. You can right click and say open, those types of things. Copying, click on a file, Control C, right click, copy, whatever it is. Right click and paste, or Control V. If you're pasting a file that already exists, it may say, do you want to overwrite that file, or do you want to rename the file, or you might have some options there. So that is something to think about. Now, the recycling bin is where all of your deleted files go. Let's go ahead and go find my recycling bin. Alright, I only have one file in it because I emptied it recently, because I hadn't emptied it and I couldn't tell you how long. So even though I've deleted this file, it is still on my computer. It's still taking up hard drive space. Until I empty the recycling bin, which I'm in the recycling bin, so there is an empty the recycling bin button. You can also right click on the recycling bin and say empty as an option for how to delete everything inside of that. An alternative is if you're trying to delete something that you don't know you're never going to care about, you can hold Shift when you hit delete, and it will say, are you sure you want to permanently delete this file? So instead of sending it to your recycling bin, it will just all out delete it. Now, I believe the recycling bin is only really for your C drive, so if I delete something off like my E or something else, it may not be recoverable. So that is something that you want to keep in mind. Also, renaming files. So even if I clicked once and you wait like a second and click on it again, you will normally get the option to rename it. Notice it doesn't by default have the file extension there. You also may not by default see the file extension. So there I just turned off file extension. So if you don't care about your file extensions, which ones that you know of, you can easily have that off. I like to see my file extensions. I don't really know why, but I find it very useful for me. So I traditionally have file extensions checked. I also have hidden items checked by default, because every once in a while I'm looking for a folder that's hidden, and it just makes my life easier if I just have everything being able to be seen. So also, going back to renaming, if you right click, there's also normally a rename option. So very important there. Now in File Explorer, you can, so right now if we go to the View tab, we are on the Details option, so we can see the name, date, modified, type, size, and you can add a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, a whole bunch of other stuff if you actually care to add all of that. Depending on what you're doing, the extra large icons might be the better option. There you can actually see like what pictures look like without having to click on them. Depending on the file type, you may actually be able to see them or not. Small icons is the same kind of idea, except for you can't see them, the details. Maybe a list view if you have a lot of icons and you like going sideways instead of vertically. That might be good for you. Tiles. So here you can see content. So again, we can kind of see what the pictures look like. All right. What I have found most useful recently is actually under the current view in the group by. For my downloads folder, I like to group by date modified, and that's what I sort it by. So that way I can see very quickly what I've downloaded today versus earlier this week versus last week versus yada yada yada. So just something to keep in mind. That group by option can be useful, but it also can be a pain. More often than not, if I'm like in my documents folder, I will actually sort by type. And because normally I know what type of file I'm looking for. I'm like, oh, I'm looking for a text file or a model file or AutoCAD or whatever. And I find that easier to be looking up by type than file name, especially if I'm not 100% sure what I saved it, but I know what type of file it is. So type is actually probably how I have things most often. Now, when it comes to zipped files, which I should have some, here we go, cut list. All right, this is a .zip file format or a compressed zip file. All right, Windows in the File Explorer has an extraction system built right into it. If I go back to downloads, so you see it's .zip. I double click on it, it keeps me in File Explorer. We get an extra tab at the top, and there is an extract all button. It does show me all the files inside of it, and actually if you double click on most of those, normally it will extract just that single file to a temporary location for you. I traditionally suggest you extract all your files, and let me go ahead and just replace all the files. And by default, Windows automatically opens up your extracted file. So here you have the old window, here you have the new window. I find that to be both annoying and useful. I kind of wish it would open up in the old window so I didn't have 12 different explorers open if you're extracting a whole bunch of stuff. But it can be useful. Now, the whole point of file compression is to make a large file more compact, making it easier and faster to send large attachments by email, upload them to the web, or save them to a disk. All right, that is the whole point here. People have been known to try to conserve all the space on the computer they can, where they take a whole bunch of files, they create a zip, and they have take 100 files, create 10 zips. Then they take those 10 zips and they zip the zips. All right. Every time you do compress something, you are losing data. All right. That's the whole point. You're trying to get rid of wasted data. Now that could be it goes through the text files, the equivalent of all those files, and says, all right, this is the most frequently used character combination, ABQP. And we're going to replace ABQP with capital AA or something like that. So when it compresses it, it takes 5 bits or 5 characters, which is actually 8 bits, or it's 40 bits, and compresses it down to say 12 bits or something like that. So it saves a lot of that, and it keeps a conversion table handy for itself. So when it's unzipping, it can go back and extract everything correctly in theory. You are still going to be losing data to some point. So that is something very important to think about. All files do not compress. Just because you can doesn't mean it's going to help. So let's go ahead. If I highlight everything here, it's 2.48 megabytes. If I go back to that cut list, we're at 961 kilobytes. So that one, we actually got a 50% saving by zipping it. That's not necessarily always going to be the case. All right. Now, the wonderful question we're having right now is, which is increasing faster? The size of files that we're saving or the hard drive sizes? All right. So it's kind of going, what's the point of compressing, right? If I have 12 terabytes of hard drive space, that's going to take me 20 years to fill up. Why do I care about compression anymore? And the big reason that we still care about compression is, like I said earlier, is hard downloads and things along those. So if you're downloading or uploading, that is where we really care about file size. If I can have a 2 terabyte file and compress it down to 500 gigs, that's going to drop my download time by 200%. So it's only going to take 25% of the time it would take to download it. So that is where we truly care about compression. For the most part, hard drives are getting so big that we have so much space so cheaply that it's not a big deal to be like, oh yeah, this is a 12 terabyte file, or not 12 terabyte, but 12 gigabyte file. And you're like, yeah, I got 2 terabytes, that's fine. But as you also saw, that, based on my computer, my hard drive space is actually starting to run out. I've got 28 gigs free here, 194 there. So I've got about 1/5 of this one, I've got about 1/10 of that one, and I've got about 1/3 of this one left. So hard drive space is not completely cheap, free until the point of you're never going to run out of it yet. But we are starting to get pretty cheap, where like $40 gets you 2 terabytes or something like that. Which, as you can see, that might not be enough for my purposes. All right, that's because I digitize my videos and whatnot, so I have backups of them when the DVDs get scratched and things like that, because my daughter likes to take them out of their cases. But it's it's that wonderful game. I can buy another hard drive and put it in my computer. I have the space for it, and I could buy a 2, 4, 10 terabyte hard drive and probably have enough space for my lifetime. So that is something to think about. Now, Windows Zip or WinZip or the zip program built into File Explorer is not the only zip or compression program out there, and it's not the only file format. .zip. All right, ZIP is a big one for Windows. RAR is also a big one. 7Z I've seen. TAR, I think TAR is more of a Linux one. But there are all sorts of different compression formats out of them, and they all have different algorithms, and they all work slightly differently. So you kind of have to pick which one you like the best. All right, 7-Zip is an open source program that you can download for compression and uncompression, and it does all of these different file formats. So it may be a good thing to have this on your computer. It's not guaranteeing that it's going to be able to unzip any file you get, but it's also got basically most of the ones covered that you might come across on a normal day. So there is something to think about when it comes to this type of thing. So 7-Zip is a good alternative to have on your computer, or at least be ready to download in case you need it for some sort of funky file format. Now, when it comes to utilities that come incorporated into your operating system, there are a few different types. So we have system performance utilities, like Task Manager. So this is Task Manager for Windows. Traditionally, if you haven't done this already, it only shows up as this little itty bitty little thing, which tells you all the programs that you have currently running. So you can see a whole bunch of stuff that I've got opened on another screen for this presentation right this second. However, if you click more details, it will tell you all sorts of things about CPU usage, memory usage, disk usage, network usage, and even GPU usage. So you can actually see with Camtasia, we're using a good bit of my GPU right now for encoding. There's also a performance tab where you can then go ahead and click on them to see different options. So we have my 3D is actually what's really being used right now. Not so much my copying or encoding or whatnot. But you can see disk usage, you can see your memory, you can see my CPU, which I do have a 12-core when it's hyper-threading processor, so 6 cores, 12 logical. Now you can see that core 2 is getting the crap beat out of it right now. Don't know what program's using it, but if we come in here and look, we go by CPU usage, Python is what's using the most, or Camtasia, one of those two. So one of those two is just hitting my one CPU pretty darn hard right now. So, but yeah, Task Manager is a good system performance utility. All right. You also might have Firewall, if I can find that one. There we go, Windows Firewall. So here you can see your Windows Firewall for Windows 10 at least, and you can go through and open up stuff, open up ports, close ports, allow certain programs through, block certain programs, those sorts of things, change your notification settings, all sorts of options in here. I would highly suggest making sure that you have some sort of firewall system built into your computer, or enabled on your computer. If you don't like Windows Defender or Windows Firewall, find an auxiliary one. Software firewalls are not the end-all perfect solution, but it's better than none if you don't have a hardware firewall built in and on your network. So like enterprise-grade networks, they will have one computer dedicated purely to firewall-related stuff to protect the network. Then they'll have their router after that. So, one of those things that you do want to keep in mind. File compression is another utility that we have already talked about some. Another option would be disk cleanup. All right, and you have this for each of the hard drives on your computer. So here we can see This is saying, hey, here's all the junk that we think you don't actually need on your computer. So they have the downloaded program files, temporary internet files, delivery optimization, thumbnails actually is a large one. So that's something that you want to keep into. So Windows keeps a copy of all your pictures, video, and document thumbnails so they can be displayed quickly when you open a folder. All right. So if I delete this, they will be recreated as needed. Now, right now, my total disk space is only 120 megabytes. Notice my recycling bin is empty at this point. Oftentimes, for me, the recycling bin is the largest user of my that disk cleanup will fix for me. So that is something to look into. Another possible one, which is disk defragging, which we have talked about a little bit. All right. So it shouldn't be running. So disk defrag, you can see we have multiple different options on here. So my disk defrag is on for all of them, and it says it is on, and it's all not optimal. They all are in 0% fragmented, so in theory that's keeping a good job on there. In theory, shouldn't have my SSD, my media type solid state should not be being defragged right. Nope. Oh, okay, it's doing trimming work, so that is okay. So for a solid state drive, versus a traditional hard drive, there is some differences that are being done. So here you can see we're defragging this specific hard drive right now. When I did to my solid state, I did what was called trimming. So slightly different processes. And you can see this is probably going to take a while. All right, especially the larger your hard drive, the longer it's going to take. It did say that both of these were okay. We're now at 21%. I don't know when the last time that it was done, but something to think about. This does say weekly this is being defragged. So that is just something that you might want to think about. Traditionally, when you are defragging, you don't want to be using that drive much because the whole point of defragging is to rearrange all of your files so all of the different parts are in one line instead of having part of the file in location A, at location A in the alphabet, and then the next part in the queue. You want all the files to be A, B, C, D for file 1, then E, F, G for file 2. You want to keep all the parts together instead of having them spread out all over the place. So this defragging will make your access times a bit quicker for your files. So that is something that you do probably want to have. Now, if we come into our task manager while this is doing this, let's go look at our performance on drive E. You will notice that bad boy is spiked to full percent. All right, and we are done defragging. So now it just dropped right back down. So just something to think about. Windows 10 does do this by default, so something good there. Now, when it comes to files and system backup utilities, one option that you do have is a file history with Windows. Now, I have this turned off, but you can configure file history so it can save copies of your files so you can back if you lose them or damage them. So you can copy files, it says, from your libraries, desktop contacts, and favorites. So something to think about. So like if I edited a picture or I deleted a picture by accident, I could go, oh, let me go get that back, and I could go bring that file back from the dead, basically. Obviously, if you are going to keep file history, this can take up a lot of space. All right, I have almost probably a terabyte of video and music and things like that. If I want to keep an entire file history of all of that, that means every file I basically have a backup of. So depending on what you're doing, use this wisely. You don't want to be backing up all your files and all of a sudden have no free space because you've backed up everything so many different times. So that is a possible one. Another better system, one that I like better, more important, it doesn't protect your files, but it protects your computer, is System Restore, which now I do have on for my computer. So if for some odd reason my computer started acting funky, it stopped working, I couldn't boot, whatever, I could go into System Restore and I can go back in time. Now you can see that I have two different System Restore points in here. One from 4 days ago, one from 6 days ago. So I have an automatic restore point that the system created, and I have one when I installed the CSV-bomb. So something to think about. But this basically takes your computer back in time to like a snapshot of one of the applications, drivers, things like that from that day. This isn't a guaranteed fix, but it is a great way to get yourself out of a pinch of your computer loop. boot looping, so it just never exits the whole boot process or something like that. So this has saved me on many occasions, and it has saved me from stupid problems as well, dealing with PowerPoint doing dual screen presentation mode or things like that. So that is something to highly contemplate. There's also other ways to create backups and system resets, disks, and things like that for Windows that you might want to look into as well. When it comes to accessibility, so other people can, or people with disabilities or just sight issues or things like that, there's a Windows Accessibility Manager. So Windows Accessibility, there are multiple options in here. There's stuff for vision, there's stuff for hearing, there's stuff for interaction. One that I often use in class is actually the magnifier. So we can turn the magnifier on, and it actually has this little control window. You can say full screen, you can say little lens, so that just follows my mouse around. This is actually slowing my mouse down a lot right now. I don't know if that's just to help. Oh man, that is bad right now. I gotta get this off. My mouse is so jittery right now. Alright, so, but anyway, there are multiple view options. You can do a little bar across the top. That is working better. I often just do the full screen option where I can move my mouse and it just kind of, everything is zoomed in. So, but there is that option for magnification. You can have different zoom lenses. You can actually invert the colors of the zoom, those types of things. You can have the magnifier follow stuff. So there's a lot of options in there. Color filters, if you have some color blindness, you can actually do that. We can invert colors. That is pretty psychedelic, especially if you look at the desktop. So, grayscale, inverted grayscale. If you have a red-green issue, you have a blue, red, yeah. So all sorts of options there. So there's all sorts of good accessibility stuff in here, and especially if you're working with some grandparents or your parents and they just have some problems, something really to look into. Alright, and that is all I have for us for part 2 of Chapter 5.